Voter registration continues across the country today. Lawmakers will vote on Tuesday on the motion that was proposed by the EFF. Now, this is to close the Israeli embassy in the country and suspend diplomatic relations. A very good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Johannesburg in Auckland Park. Thank you very much for tuning in. You're watching The Week Ahead. You can interact with us on social media platforms. It's at Week Ahead, and our hashtag is The Week Ahead. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabala. Now, it's day 2 of the voter registration weekend, and for the latest from KwaZulu-Natal, we cross live now to Ayanda Mhlongo, who's in Nongoma for us this afternoon. Ayanda, very good afternoon. We've heard from the KZN electoral officer that over 187,000 people registered to vote yesterday, so a fairly decent number heeded the call to register. How's it been looking like at the station you're at this afternoon?
A very good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to our voters. Yeah, decent number, as you say, for the rest of the province. But I must say, Mfundo, that since this morning we have been moving from the different voting stations here in the area of KwaNongoma, which falls under the Zululand district. And I must say that the numbers here have been quite low. We're speaking to a number of the presiding officers as well, and them telling us that even yesterday the numbers that they had expected were very much low. In fact, at the voting station where we spent about 2 hours or so earlier on today, there were, I'd say, less than 20 people that had come through this morning. Yesterday, they said the numbers of the new or those that come in for new applications were at around 26. If you're looking at the size of that voting station, it was one of the biggest voting stations here in the area of KwaNongoma, with about 1,700 registered voters. So the presiding officers there saying, not the high numbers that they were expecting, and particularly, as you know, Mfundo, that there's been a lot of focus on young people and political parties, the IEC trying to encourage young people to go out. These are the first-time voters to register, but those young people as well to go and ensure that they re-register and to check that they are on the voters' roll. And a very low number of young people coming through. We did get an opportunity. I mean, there was a group of young people that we saw gathered outside a tree, and we went to them to ask them, what is the reason? Are they going to register to vote? And others simply said, no, we don't see a purpose of registering to vote because we don't intend to vote next year. And my question was why? And they saying, just look at our community, look at our area. We finished the matric, some of us are graduates, but there are no jobs, there are no opportunities, we don't have water. Network as well is a problem in our community. So raising a number of issues related to a service delivery and saying that based on that they feel that there is no need for them to be able to vote. One young person saying that his parents grew up under this difficult situation, and he is now a young person in the early 20s, and there has not been much change. So them not feeling the need to register to vote. But I must balance that, Mfundo, with other people. Of course, there were one or two others who said, yes, despite, the conditions in the area and despite their circumstances, they feel that it is important for them to register to vote because they hope that next year with their vote, they are going to be able to vote for a party that will bring about change. So mixed views, really, but I would say that, Mfundo, largely in this district where we are, many of, and particularly the young people, I must emphasize, are not quite optimistic about voting. Of course, as we're saying that this is the first voter registration weekend, there is going to be another one closer to the elections. So there is still some time for political parties to, garner, speak to young people and hope that they are going to be able to change their minds. But I can tell you, Mfundo, it seems that there's still quite a lot of work that needs to be done by political parties to ensure that these young people next year will be amongst those that will cast their ballots. For now.
Thank you very much, and a very interesting perspective from some of those young people who, in the main, are complaining about service delivery and would view that not voting is what would possibly be the option in this regard. But certainly, like you say, it is a wake-up call for political parties that clearly a lot of campaigning around the importance of voting needs to take place in some of these communities, particularly among the young, because it's a hard-fought-for right to vote. So it's honestly quite concerning that we're getting this similar trend. Well, that was our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo giving us the very latest. Well, SABC News reporter Corbin August is in Khayelitsha and joins us now with the very latest. Corbin, have people come out in their numbers to register today there where you are?
Well, yes, good day to you again. Right now we are crossing to you from inside Manyano High School here in Khayelitsha. We're standing just outside of the classroom that's being used as a voter registration station. We did receive some information earlier when we were talking to officials, and indeed they say that in terms of registration activity, the numbers have increased today compared to yesterday. They say they saw about 40 people who came through so far, and yesterday was only about 20 for the whole day. So yes, indeed, they are seeing an increase in registration numbers and increase in registration activity. But we were also fortunate enough to find some of the youth, some of the first-time voters who have come out today to register so that they will be in a position to make their mark count when it comes to elections. We will speak to one or two of them now. Here they are. Good day to you.
Good day, sir.
Let's just start with why you came here today and how the process was for you.
I came here to vote because I want my vote to be heard for next year when I start voting, and also I want to see changes in our country. That's why I came here to vote. Yes.
Okay. And just with regards to the actual process, when you went into the registration station and everything that you need to do, the IDs and the documents, just how long did it take you? Were you happy with the process? How did you feel?
No, I was very, very happy because it was so easy. It was not like something big or huge. I just had to come here with my ID and just show up, and then it took about like 2 minutes to just register. That's all I had to do.
Okay, and then just tell us, why do you think, from what you've seen so far, in your view, why is the registration and voting so important, especially for the young generation?
No, that's a very tough question. I think it's very important because some areas, there's no voices to be heard about what's going on, and people are very struggling in some areas, like example in Eastern Cape, about water and stuff like that. So when you vote, one of the places like ANC, it's going to probably make a big change, problems of issues in other places, rural areas. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We do understand. We have another gentleman here, also another first-time voter who came out today to register. Let's just start with you. How did you find the process, and when you went through, what are your views?
My views are the process was easy. I just need to bring my ID and my phone number, and then that's it. It take only 2 minutes, then you're finished. It didn't take the long time like when you're going to South Line, they're very long. Here was short, easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we understand you are from the area. Just in terms of some of the challenges that you face here in the area, how do you think registration and voting will be able to maybe help you, and why do you think it's important?
I think it's important to register, because when you register, you have the ability, the ability to vote. And when you vote, then your voices and what you want and what other people want, they will make it happen. So in some places they don't have voices to be like in Lovin, you see, they don't have houses. They struggle a lot. There's no toilet, no water. When they go, they get water. They need to go to the tap. There's only one tap in some location. So they need to go there early to get water. You see. So I think if they vote, their problems and demands will be heard. That's why I think voting is important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to us. And that was two of the voters, the first-time voters who have come out to register and to ensure that all of their details are in order so that they will be able to make their mark count in the national elections and the other elections going forward. Of course, they are saying that the process when they came through to register was seamless, quite effortless and quite easy and fast. And they are saying that they are looking forward to voting and looking forward to see how they can help change and bring positive change to the areas where they live in through using their votes and making their votes count. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Corbin. That's Corbin August in the Western Cape for us. To the Northern Cape now, where SABC News reporter Ulrich Hendricks is monitoring voter registration in Kimberley. Ulrich, it's day 2 today. Can you just give us the IEC's stats thus far? How many people have visited that particular station where you are?
Well, I can give you the figures in terms of the province. That is just under 29,000 that were counted by this morning. And that is people who changed their registration or their addresses. And of course, around 6,000 of those 30,000 who are new people coming to register to vote for the first time. It's a bit better in terms of people coming to register and to change their addresses. Yesterday we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people maximum coming to the various voting stations. Today it's a lot better. The IEC also saying this morning that, normally on these registration weekends, you get after 1 o'clock on the Sunday of the registration weekend, you get that spike. And so they're hoping that, that spike will sustain and get them to about 60,000 new voters coming to check their details. And they want most of them to be, of course, young people, coming to vote for the first time. Let's speak to Jurgen Nienaber. Jurgen, this is going to be the first time that you're going to vote.
Yes.
And why did you think it's important for you to come and register today?
I think we need a stronger economy, and I think there could be a lot more work opportunities for any people, like in any race. So I'm gonna vote on the promises that they make, and if they can, if the party that I'm voting for can keep the promise, if they can say they can bring more work and they can make the economy stronger, that's what I'm gonna base my vote on.
Okay, and we've got a lot of issues here in the Salt Lake municipality, Kimberley. We're looking at potholes, sewage leaks, etc. Are those going to be playing in your mind when you have to vote?
Yes, because I think it's not safe for the people to drive if there's potholes and stuff. So I think if they can also fix that, it would also be good.
You could have done this on your cell phone. You could have done it on your laptop. Register for the first time. Why did you decide to? You're a young person. You're tech savvy, etc. So why did you decide to come within your voting district and do it person to person?
I actually came with my parents. They said it's easier, so that's why I came.
So the young, technologically advantaged decided to listen to the old fossils.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jurgen Nienaber, of course, talking about coming to register here at Large School the Tweetspan for the first time. He's of course excited to register and excited to be voting in next year's 2024 elections for the first time. He's saying that the economy is a big deal. Service delivery is a big deal for him when he makes his mark next year.
All right. Ulrich, thank you very much for that reportage. That's our reporter, Ulrich Hendricks. To Limpopo now, where SABC News reporter Mahlako Komane is monitoring the second day of the IEC voter registration weekend in Piring Village. Mahlako, perhaps to start with just a roundup of day 1. How was the first day of voter registration in that particular area? All right. Unfortunately, we haven't found Mahlaku, but we will certainly go back to Limpopo to find out how voter registration is coming along today. But still on that, we take you to KwaZulu-Natal now, where the Chief Electoral Officer, Ntomfuthi Masinga, says over 187,000 people visited voting stations in KwaZulu-Natal. This was to register and update their details on the voters' roll yesterday. Over 34,000 people have registered to vote for the first time in KwaZulu-Natal. SABC News reporter Nonhlakanipho Magwaza has more.
Today is the second day of voter registration around the country, and we've had various political heads going around voter registration sites just to oversee how the registration is going and to give messages of support to communities, especially the young people. With me now is Deputy President of the EFF, Mr. Floyd Shivambu, who went around the province, and today he is here at the DUT campus here in eThekwini. Mr. Floyd Shivambu, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. I understand that you've been around the province checking out voter registration sites. Can you just briefly tell us what have you observed? What were the challenges that were faced in various voting stations, and what can be improved?
No, look, we have been to almost all the regions that are closer to eThekwini, to Utukela, to Mgungundovu, to Ilembe, to Ugu. And then also we get to know what is happening in King Tetwayo, in Amajuba, in all the regions. What we are very much impressed about is that the elections registrations are fairly stable almost everywhere, and that the EFF is represented in all the voting stations. So it's a peaceful environment. And what is even much more interesting and much more inspiring is that even in the voting stations of wards that are going into by-elections, in Umsunduzi, Ward 41, in Mkambatini, Ward 7, in Nkosilanga Ward 11 as well, there's peaceful interaction of all political parties, the ANC, the IFP, the EFF, and other parties are coexisting to campaign openly and democratically for the upcoming elections without any fears of intimidation. So we're in a stable environment, and young people are coming in their numbers to register to vote. So I'm very much inspired and are encouraged as the economic freedom fighters that there is proper progress under conditions of absolute stability. There's not even one incident that was brought to our attention in all the 4,973 voting stations of KwaZulu-Natal. We have thus far observed maximum stability and cordiality amongst all the political parties that are engaged in elections.
Mr. Shivambu, there are some youth that have gone out to register for the first time, but there are some those that are still reluctant to go and vote, saying that they don't know why they should vote because nothing happens. And there are still some older people who have the same mentality. What message can you give to those reluctant people who don't want to go and register to vote?
No, look, young people must appreciate that elections is a weapon that is in their hands to change their lives for the better. So there are so many things that are a problem in South Africa. Lack of access to free quality education at higher education level. There are so many things that have to be dealt with. Joblessness, high levels of unemployment, lack of electricity. We need to have young people to take up upon themselves to change the politics of South Africa. If you do not vote in the current status quo, it means you agree with the status quo. So you have to take it upon yourself as a young person to go and register to vote so that you can change the future to be better. We are here, we are where we are because those who came before us took upon it themselves to change the politics. So as young people of South Africa, all of us, let us take it upon ourselves to go and register to vote and be responsible citizens. Voting is a citizenship responsibility and obligation that must define everyone else. It is irresponsible and actually reckless to be not registered to vote. It shows that you are not interested about your future. So all young people are encouraged to come and register to vote. What is inspiring, by the way, in KwaZulu-Natal is that a significant number of young people are coming to the fore in institutions of higher learning, in communities. A majority of our volunteers, literally more than 70% of the volunteers of the EFF are young people below the age of 30, and that is inspiring. And we're calling on all other provinces as well to show the zeal, the exuberance, the excitement that is defining the young people in KwaZulu-Natal who are going, by the way, to change the government of the ANC come 2024 and put in place a government of the EFF to take forward this province towards sustainable prosperity.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
That was Deputy President of the EFF, Mr. Floyd Shivambu, encouraging those who are reluctant to go and register or check their details or voter registration details in order to vote next year, and is saying that there are more youth or young people that they've seen across KZN who have gone out to register for the first time. Earlier on, we spoke to the IEC PEO, Mrs. Tomfuthi Masinga, who said that there are over 34,000, just over 34,000 people, new registration that they registered yesterday here in the province.
All right, we continue with our voter registration coverage for this weekend. To Limpopo now, where SABC News reporter Matlako Koman is monitoring the second day of the IEC voter registration weekend in Piring Village. Matlako, good afternoon. Perhaps second time will be lucky. Just start with a roundup of day one. How was the first day of voter registration in that particular area?
Yes, good afternoon indeed. The first day, we haven't really heard of any major incidents or incidences in the province that perhaps had taken place. However, later on today, around about 4 o'clock, we are hoping to get the IC in the province just to give us a breakdown of what transpired on both days, in terms of the stats that they have. We have moved from the Piring Village. We're in another area here called Pottershoek. I think we are in Pottershoek right now. Apologize for that. And we're just speaking and just seeing what is happening as you move across these voting stations where people are coming to register to be able to partake in the elections next year. Obviously the big focus would be on those first time people that are coming for the first time to register in order to partake in voting next year. A lot of young people, it is in the middle of matric exams for most of them. So as these stations are stationed as schools, you do find that in this area there's a lot of matric camps that are going on. So a lot of learners there are able to come and register, and those that have already been 18 perhaps that chose to register online are able to check and verify their information. But I am joined again here by Boitshepo Nkwana. He is a first time, he's registering for the first time, he has registered for the first time. I'm just going to ask you, o registerile o no go spetse jwang ke eng ntwe dirileng gore bone gore go bohlokwa gore o te kre o register gore go nne vota ngo go tlang if o tlo vote?
We are gonna the way when we look at since we are the future, the next generation, the only thing we must do is we must participate in such things which will end up benefiting us in the near future. So we've been crying, a lot of people have been crying that there's no things, maybe let's say they are busy complaining about the ANC, but then they are not doing anything which will actually result them in a good thing. So the best way we must do such things, register, so we can know the future Michika is the future generation.
All right, thank you so much. And then process we create ya register and all easy no jwang.
It could be easy today because I thought it but then it was just a once-off thing. So the procedure it was also. So thanks, man.
Encourage ba bang bona gore ba ye batle batlo register o ka ba encourage.
Yeah, the youth alone is going to be part of this registration because, like I said before, we are the next future generation, so we must start here so we can overcome the crisis that we are facing now.
All right, thank you so much. That was Boitshepo Nkwana. He is here at Meditsi High School in Pottershoek. Here we are in the Sekhukhune area, just telling us that it's quite important. He found it quite important that in order for him to be able to participate, suppose meaningfully in decisions in terms of effecting change, it is quite important. As a young person, he felt that instead of just complaining, this was an opportunity to somehow, I suppose, change the direct to change the course of history, saying complaining would not help very much if you don't come here, so that next year you are able to, speak your voice through, I suppose, the ballot paper. But also here we are also being told in terms of the statistics between yesterday and up to a few minutes ago, when I went to ask how many people had come through to either check, to either register for the first time, some changing addresses. They had seen 124 residents walking in to either change their address or register for the first time, as well as just to make sure they are still registered to vote here in next year's elections.
All right, Mahlako, thank you very much for that reportage. That's our reporter, Mahlako Komane. We go to Mpumalanga now, where SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Jele is monitoring day 2 of voter registration processes. Nhlanhla, good afternoon. I know that yesterday was somewhat of an uneventful day for you. We understand that a number of the stations you visited early in the morning actually had nobody visiting. Firstly, just take us through day 1. How was it?
Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and to our viewers at home. Indeed, yesterday was quite dry around the province. The station that we visited yesterday actually expected 800 people to make their way through the doors, but only at around midday they had seen around 80 people. Some stations had seen about 19. We also understand that yesterday 2 stations in the Emalahleni local municipality had to close their doors because of protesting by community members over service delivery issues, and also one station in the Dr. J.S. Moroka local municipality in Gwamhlanga did not open their doors yesterday. Even today, they are not open because of community issues involving demarcation issues that they have in that local municipality. The station that we visited today, this morning, had issues as well yesterday. Luckily for the station and the staff at the station yesterday, all this happened later on after registration was done and they had closed. So security was ambushed by some local men who forced him out of the center and had to actually close and locked him out of the center. So, but luckily this morning they opened. However, they opened a bit late because they had to wait for police to come and unlock the lock that the men yesterday had put on those gates so that people can start coming in. Remember, I mentioned earlier that voting station in Ward 11 in Bushbuckridge is one of the busiest, and they had about 24 people walking in, but they were expecting more people. Right now, Fundo, we are at Hazyview Home Affairs offices. I'll just step out of the shot just to show you a bit of what is happening in these offices. We decided to come to these offices just to check on their operations. Remember, Home Affairs extended their operating hours for this weekend so that people can come to collect their IDs and also make new applications. We understand that yesterday these offices saw at least 67 people who came in to collect and to also apply or make new applications for their IDs. We also know that this morning they've seen around 24 people, both who came to apply and also to collect. The manager in this offices told us that this office has about 1,300 uncollected ID documents. So they're encouraging people to come and collect their identity documents. Remember, for one to register to vote, you need to have a green barcoded ID or a smart card to be able to register to vote or to be eligible to vote. And also, IEC told us that people as young as 16 years of age can go and register to vote, but they'll only be eligible to vote at the age of 18. So when you are 16 years of age, you are allowed to go and register to vote, but you'll only be able to vote when you are of the age of 18. We also heard in Bushbuckridge earlier on that they're hoping that their votes will make a difference or will bring about change in their community. We spoke to a lot of young people. Remember, a lot of young people are not coming forward to register to vote. Many of them that we meet along on the streets say to us that they are not interested because they are unemployed, because there's no service delivery. So those are some of the issues that we are picking up on the ground. But as I've made mention earlier, that we are in this Home Affairs offices, and as IEC has also mentioned, today is the last day for physical walk-ins for re-registration, first-time applications, and also to check your details on the IEC database. But not all hope is lost. As soon as these offices or registration stations close, people can still continue to go online and still check their information on the IEC database to verify rather, and also to re-register and also to make new applications. Mfundo.
Reportage. That's our reporter Nhlanhla Jele, who's out in Mpumalanga and particularly in Hazyview at the Home Affairs Office, and they're just stating that 1,300 ID documents have not been collected. So if you live around that area and remember that you applied for an ID, do make sure to fetch it, because that is the only way you'll be able to register to vote and next year to be able to vote and make sure that your voice is heard. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, economists say South Africa's latest credit rating report comes as no surprise given the country's economic outlook. Ratings agencies S&P Global has kept South Africa's credit rating unchanged at sub-investment grade. It also kept the country's outlook unchanged at stable. The local economy is expected to grow at below 1% this year.
South Africa continues to grapple with economic growth due to multiple economic challenges. This is evident in the Standard & Poor's report, which raised its concern about the country's growing debt levels above 70% of GDP. Good news is that the ratings agency has kept the country's economic outlook unchanged at stable despite the worsening fiscal position. Economists say while the S&P stance is welcomed, it doesn't bode well in positioning the country as a good investment destination.
Standard & Poor's decided to keep South Africa's rating unchanged, and I think chances are that they will maintain this specific outlook for quite some time. But unfortunately, it's still junk bonds, which means South Africa is not considered as a good investment destination, whether you buy South African rand-denominated bonds or dollar-denominated bonds. South Africa is seen as so-called junk bonds, which simply means that we will be paying quite expensive if we want to borrow money locally or internationally.
The rating agency also noted the private sector's substantial investments in power generation and renewable energy. These investments are expected to support economic growth over the medium term. National Treasury, on the other hand, has welcomed the rating decision. Treasury says that government will continue its push to resolve electricity and logistical constraints to help catalyze growth in the local economy. Economists say this is a necessary step for the country's economic growth.
I get the impression that Standard & Poor's is getting a little bit more upbeat about the outlook for the South African economy. They mentioned private sector investment in power generation, and we all understand and know that power is a major constraint to the South African economy. I also get the impression that Standard & Poor reckons there is a possibility of slightly higher inflation over the next couple of months, and that, of course, will depend on things like, for example, the exchange rate of the currency and international oil prices.
S&P Global says it viewed the country's outlook as stable given its credible central bank, the country's flexible exchange rate, an active trade currency, and its deep capital markets. Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The South African Reserve Bank is predicted to keep its repo rate unchanged on the 23rd of November and wait until May 2024 before cutting it. This was revealed in a Reuters poll. This as policymakers try to navigate risks to inflation and the timing of when global interest rates will start to fall. For more on this, we're joined by economist Kanti Pai. Kanti, good afternoon and thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. It's very good to talk to you.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us yet again. So the final interest rate decision for this year will be delivered this week. I must say, it's been quite a bumpy ride for South Africans since the start of the hiking cycle back in November of 2021. But we're now hearing that we could see a third hold on rates and even introduction of cuts come 2024. Your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to say that we've seen a bumpy ride because actually we've been really in a very, very volatile environment. I think, it's where everything is uncertain. And leaders, including actually the Reserve Bank, have to make decisions in an environment where so many sectors are moving all at the same time. And I think one of the things, as we now look forward into whether or not we can cut rates, it does seem that, of course, that will also be decided by a number of moving factors, including the fact that, of course, we are going into an election year and, the fiscal situation that we are facing, as you know. And then, of course, also the global factors that are all upon us. So there's certainly a lot of things to consider, but one does hope, actually, that it is true that we'll be able to see rate cuts in the middle of next year or towards the end. And one of the key situations that, of course, is the way in which inflation looks like is starting to, to slow down, given what we've seen before.
But I remember quite vividly that stern warning from the governor, Kganyago, at the last announcement. He said that the risk of inflation remains very high. And he was actually frank, and he said they stand ready to cut at any point. So would you say that we expect perhaps another hold, but nevertheless there would still be that warning around the volatility of this economy?
Absolutely, you've got it right. Certainly that the volatility is a big thing, but certainly that we can say, I think they always say in the Reserve Bank that they are driven by data. So every time they look at everything and all the factors, and then they say, look, perhaps now it's time to raise. One of the key factors I think that we are facing now that are positive on our side is a slowing inflation in the U.S., and they've already said that they aim on that side to start cutting rates. And that's something that the Reserve Bank has been very concerned about, because remember, we have to be competitive in terms of our interest rates so that capital doesn't leave South Africa. Because remember, what happens is that whenever interest rates are higher in one area and lower in another, people tend to move their money to where the interest rates are higher, because of course you want a higher return. And that does make, the South African exchange rate tend to be a little bit weaker, and that influences inflation. But we are seeing, food inflation coming down. I think you will be reporting around also the numbers that are coming out of petrol prices that also seem to be coming down. We've seen, some stability in the exchange rate. It's better than what we saw the last time when the monetary policy of the Reserve Bank met. So there are a number of positive things that suggest that at least we could hold now, as you say, and perhaps look to cut later if the kind of circumstances that we are seeing now continue to sustain.
Do you expect a unanimous decision on the hold?
Oh, no. One doesn't expect that it will be unanimous, because one of the things that we've seen is that there are some members of the Monetary Policy Committee. Remember, there are a number of people there that have different kinds of approaches to the way the Reserve Bank does policy. And on that basis, you tend to see that, there's one thing, for example, that maybe more of, they talk about doves and hawks, and some people who tend to look towards more lower interest rates and some look towards higher. And so one does not expect that it is unanimous, especially because there are still so many risks on the outlook. I think one of the things that's also interesting is that, we've seen employment improve. And so some of the members, they think, well, actually, given the improvements in the employment situation, we've also seen, wages also come up. That also may be seen as a risk to inflation, or at least that actually things are not as bad as they were maybe the last time, and so there's space. So there's a lot of things that are happening, so one does not expect that to be unanimous. It would be wonderful it is, because it could tell us then that we can now expect something different, because obviously if it's unanimous, then we sort of have a better idea of where they are thinking and where we are going.
And then just before I let you go, I can't let you go before asking just your views around those employment numbers. We saw a decrease in the employment around the mining sector. Your views there, and particularly manufacturing as well?
Look, I think it's not surprising. Remember, the situation in mining relates very much to the logistical challenges that we've been facing. And so many of the mining companies have said, look, let's actually decrease production, because what is the point of continuing to produce and then your produce gets stuck on the way to the client? And so many of them have started to talk about reducing that. So that's not surprising because of that. Of course, as you know, we also have got the challenges that we have in energy. And energy is very important in terms of course, of manufacturing. But certainly also the world economy, the global economy, much of which we export to, is also at a very slow pace. So those are not very surprising things given the environment that we are facing. But I think one has the idea that hopefully as we resolve all these challenges, we can look forward to a party maybe next year if we look to resolve all of these things, because clearly there is momentum. But of course we face the challenges we face.
All right, Kanti, thank you very much as always for joining us. That was economist Kanti Pai speaking to us. More news on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. EFF leader Julius Malema has tabled a motion in the National Assembly for South Africa to close the Israeli embassy and cut diplomatic ties with that country. The National Assembly will vote on the motion in a full sitting of the House this Tuesday.
The EFF sponsors of this draft resolution referred to the crisis in the Middle East as mass murder and ethnic cleansing. Julius Malema defended his party stance, saying the call for freedom for Palestine is not anti-Semitic.
Palestinians have lived under Israeli military occupation without basic human rights, such as the rights to life, the right to equality, the right to a fair trial, the right to protest, the freedom of speech, the freedom of movement, the freedom of assembly or media freedom. This has been going on not since October 2023, but since 1948.
The EFF was supported by the ANC.
Our government is in discussion with the matter of closing the Israel embassy in Pretoria, and will need to take into consideration that it may affect our diplomatic presence in Palestine. The demands from South Africans for the closure of the Israel embassy in Pretoria have merit, and the government is engaging all relevant stakeholders regarding our diplomatic relations with Israel, given the war crime and genocide we are witnessing in Gaza.
Some parties say isolating Israel is not viable.
It is vital for South Africa to retain diplomatic channels with both Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The ANC's decision to withdraw diplomats from Tel Aviv and the EFF's proposed expulsion of the Israeli ambassador will diminish our country's ability to demand accountability in the region and to influence a swift and peaceful resolution to this war.
Isolationism in a time of war is not a solution. It is tantamount to running away. Recalling ambassadors or removing ambassadors amounts to regressive diplomacy. It is counterproductive.
If you expel the Israeli ambassador and cut all diplomatic ties with Israel, South Africa will not be in a position to play any role whatsoever in terms of any mediation or any chance to try and play a constructive and a positive role to bring this conflict to an end.
It is full of lies, inaccuracies, and deceptions. To label Israel as an apartheid state is a lie that was coined by haters of Israel. Furthermore, to insinuate that Israel does not own land they are living on is another lie that the ACDP rejects.
The ATM, NFP, and Al Jamaa had very firm views.
We can't, as a country, refer Israel to the ICC for investigation for what we believe is war crimes and genocide, yet on the other side maintain normal relations with Israel. As a country, we can't be contradicting ourselves.
Let's shut it down, break all ties until the barbaric state of Israel is willing to sit down and negotiate and enter into a ceasefire. Nothing less, Chairperson, we need in this country.
Al Jamaa thanks the EFF for the revolutionary call to close the Zionist embassy, but we must also take legal steps to demolish the buildings in which this embassy is. Al Jamaa will also feel that South Africa must summon America, India, and Britain ambassadors for a demarque, and that South Africa must ban the display of Israeli flags.
Most parties expressed their condolences at the death of a Gift of the Giver member, Ahmed Abbasi, and his brother in Gaza. Abbasi was the office head for Gift of the Givers in the region. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
All right, more news on the other side. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the Minister for Higher Education, Science and Technology, that's Blade Nzimande, says he's quite confident that problems with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme will be resolved for the 2024 cohort, with more details to come next week. Minister Nzimande is visiting northeast England to see how an area once at the centre of carbon-intensive industries like coal mining, steel manufacturing and energy generation is turning itself into a centre for renewables. From that, he hopes lessons can be learned for South Africa. Our London correspondent Stuart Smith spoke to the minister.
Next week, I will be having a fairly extensive press briefing, which is on opening applications for NSFAS for next year. But coupled with that, I will also be outlining our state of readiness as the post-school education and training sector. You know, our universities, our TVET colleges, our community colleges, and what is to be done, as well as address specific challenges that are facing NSFAS. NSFAS does have challenges. On the whole, largely, NSFAS is paying out the monies for students and so on, but there are obstacles that are there in terms of swift responses, for instance, in cases of appeals, when students are appealing when they feel that they should have actually benefited, as well as the issue of the payment of allowances. That is why I urge NSFAS, and I'm pleased that they did that. They then undertook legal investigation into what is happening in this area. And that report is there, and I've said to NSFAS, make sure that you implement every recommendation that is in that report. Because the other challenge does not just rest with NSFAS. It also rests with institutions, and especially the timely and efficient sharing of information between universities and colleges to say which students qualify so that NSFAS is able to pay on time. Those are the things that I'm actually looking at. I'm also going to Cabinet in the next week or two on the proposed new student funding model, which also is going to be responding to attending to the needs of those students who do not qualify for NSFAS, but yet they come from families who are not rich enough to be able to easily afford, especially university education. But I would also like to call upon all South Africans, the students, the universities, the colleges, to work together with us as government, rather than standing from a distance and be throwing stones.
And tell me if we need to wait till next week to get a sense of this, but if people pull together, universities, students and the government, will these challenges be resolved for the 2024 cohort?
I'm quite confident that we will, because as I've said, you know, we are consulting now extensively. So what we're going to be announcing next week is not something that will just only be coming out of government policies, but also we have been consulting extensively and also informing the stakeholders what is happening and also seeking their opinion. For instance, I've just met with the president of the Students' Union, SAUS, to actually have a discussion as to how do we plan to work together and so on. With that, I am quite convinced that we will be ready for 2024.
All right, we shift our focus to this story now. Churches are now employing armed private security guards following a spate of attacks at places of worship. That's in an attempt to protect their congregants and properties. While there are concerns that this might further endanger worshippers' lives, some church leaders say this will serve as an effective deterrent to curb these crimes. They say the surge in attacks is reflective of the worsening crime situation in the country and should be dealt with decisively.
Criminals stormed the pulpit, armed with guns, before robbing the pastor and his congregants of their belongings. An act unheard of for criminals to desecrate what many deem as a sacred place. But the country has seen a spate of these brazen attacks with increasing regularity.
How can someone come into church and steal, like obatlaing inside the church, because we're here to worship and praise God?
We are not safe because mostly they occur random. So the thing that the community can do is come together and add the numbers of patrolling CPFs during the night and the day.
Recently, a pastor was killed whilst on the pulpit. And with criminals widening their nets, churches are now cancelling evening services. Many are also installing CCTV cameras and employing private security amid the rise in crime.
Bring the warders to help churches. I mean, they're everywhere. They've got fast cars, they are compassionate, they are passionate. We see them. Night vigils, honor prayers. For us, the charismatic and the Pentecostal, these are very core to our faith.
Freedom of Religion in South Africa, a non-profit legal organization, says government should roll up its sleeves.
For the fact that the churches are preparing themselves and getting themselves in gear with what the criminals are wanting to do within the churches. These thieves or these robbers will know that the churches are no longer a soft target. And for the fact that they know it's no longer a soft target, they won't target the churches anymore.
It is clearly the responsibility of government and the South African police services in particular to ensure that people are able to exercise their constitutional right to gather together to worship without the fear of interruption from criminal elements. We call upon the authorities, therefore, to strengthen their law enforcement efforts to make sure that places of worship are not seen as soft targets and to make every effort to bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice.
Gauteng community safety officials have recently warned the public against criminals who see gatherings and churches as soft targets for theft and robbery. They've encouraged churches to work with community policing forums for protection. Meanwhile, the CRL Commission says it will soon engage with faith-based organizations to map a way forward. Mulimo Onemoto, SABC News, Pretoria.
And that's where we leave it for today. We're back next week. Take care.